Shalom. First, I want to start by giving all honor, praises, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakwadash, which is the true name of the Heavenly Father, and His only begotten Son, who the world ignorantly calls God in Jesus Christ. Bahashem, Rachakwadash, meaning in the name, the Holy Spirit, or the Spirit Holy. Double honors unto the elders, apostles, and bishops of GMS Great Millstone who rule well, teach and edify, peace and blessings to you, sincere Akim and Aquad in His household of faith. My name is Yeshaya from the GMS Arizona Church in Ottawa, Ratazah, meaning Lord willing, or Lord's will. I'm going to make an edifying video going into your speech. All right, so the more things that you say, the more you're held accountable for that. Okay? The more things that you say, the more things that you're held accountable for. All right, the Lord judges your words. The Lord judges your speech and the things that you think and the things that you say. All right, you think it first and then you utter it out of your mouth. All right, the scriptures talk about, taming the tongue is very hard to do. All the things that are tamed, to tame like a wild horse, but to tame a tongue is a whole different thing. It's essential to, with your best ability, to try and control the things that you say, especially in terms of when your emotions are involved. Because when you're emotional, right, the decisions that you make, the things that you say, and the things that you do could be completely and utterly, mangled and disformed by what you currently feel. Okay, so it's very important to, even in the most stressful situations, to control your tongue. Right, to have faith in Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, and to have discernment through any and all things, even when you feel emotional. And the Lord presents situations like that in front of you, where your flesh wants to be all emotional, your flesh wants to be all up in their feelings and shit. Right, but you still have to stick to that which is right. Getting into some precepts of that, in Proverbs 17 and verse 28. All right, so Proverbs 17 and verse 27, it says, he that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. So a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. And part of that understanding is a way to decipher your thoughts. The word of the Lord is quick. Matter of fact, Hebrews 4 and 12, real quick. Hebrews 4 and verse 12, it says, for the word of the Lord is quick. And where do you get true understanding? You get understanding and wisdom from the word of the Lord. All right, you get wisdom from these scriptures. The Lord will put you through certain things where you have to apply these scriptures, and then you get understanding. And powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword. Right, because it'll cut you. Because say you get put in these certain situations, a man without understanding isn't going to apply the scriptures to be able to persevere through it. All right, but a man with understanding is going to understand that they have to use these scriptures to persevere through a certain situation. All right, and it says, sharper than any two-edged sword, even to dividing asunder of soul and spirit, and the joints and the marrow, because your inward man and your outward man are constantly warring. All right, your inward man is that spirit, and that outward man is that flesh. And your flesh, it's going to entice you to say the wrong things at times. Things that you shouldn't say. That's why people tell you, don't respond or don't react when you're angry. Because when you're angry, you're going to say the things that you that are either going to hurt another person or that you truly mean. Like there's certain, your filter is taken off. Right? The scriptures talk about wine is a mocker. When you're under, the influence of alcohol, certain things like people say, when drunk thoughts or sober thoughts, all right, that filter gets taken off and your mouth is just rampant. Okay? So that's why it's essential to be in the spirit to when you're using your mouth, because your mouth is a powerful thing. All right, it cuts, especially those men of the Lord who have these law, statutes, and commandments, to have this understanding of the scriptures. All right, your mouth is extremely sharp, sharper than any person in this world. All right, you in this truth, you in this sound, sincere doctrine of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. All right, you understand this thing? Your mouth is extremely dangerous to these people, right? And it's extremely edifying. Your mouth can end up getting you in trouble. That's why brothers say, don't wear your cape everywhere you go. Meaning, you don't got to be, this ultra Hebrew Israelite at work, right? Because if you probably could go to work and just start cutting everybody about everything that they do. But what is that going to get you? It's going to get you without a job. Things like that. You got to have discernment and to hold your tongue. That's why going back to Proverbs 17, it says, he that hath knowledge spareth his words. So a knowledgeable man with discretion is going to spare those words. A knowledgeable man with discretion is going to understand, like, okay, this is not the time or the place. Right? And it says, and is a discerner of thoughts and intents of the heart. So the word of the Lord is a discerner of the thoughts and the intents of the mind. All right? So pursuant to the word of the Lord, the scriptures tell you to don't be running your mouth. All right? Don't be running your mouth all over the place, man. It's Ecclesiastes or Sirach 32 and verse 8. And that reads, let thy speech be short, comprehending much in few words. Be as one that knoweth and yet holdeth his tongue. That's to have that spirit to, okay, now's not the time to tell this person. Or, this isn't, this wouldn't lead to anything by saying anything right now. The beloved apostles used to say, High Priest Ariah used to answer certain questions. He used to try to answer certain questions in one word. The less that you say, but comprehending much in few words. If a person were to ask you, just putting an analogy out there. Like, say, what's 2 plus 2? You either going to say 4, or you're going to say 2 plus 2, if you use addition, is 4. All right? A person who really knows is just going to say 4. And applying that to other things in your life. Not to ramble about your speech, because the more things that you say is the more things you're going to be held accountable for. If you let your tongue go, the tongue's going to fucking go. Okay? Your tongue is going to go, and you're going to have to deal with all the shit that happened after it went. Okay? That's the thing. It's like a wild horse. You let that wild horse go, that motherfucker gonna go pretty far, pretty quick. So, and then after he goes, you're gonna have to go fix everything that it went and did, or go back and retrieve it from how far it went. So the bottom line is, keeping on top of your tongue. Going back to real quick, a quick precept, 1 Corinthians 9 and verse 27. In the NLT, it says, I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. And disciplining your body isn't just, doing, isn't just certain things of the flesh. The flesh is pretty vast. All right, the flesh is enticed by a lot of things, and one of the things that the flesh is enticed by is a running mouth. Okay? A part of disciplining your body is disciplining all the parts of your flesh. Okay, that's what it means. I keep under my body and bring it into subjection. That means you control your body. Mortify ye therefore your members. Though your members is you, your body. Mortifying your members means, disciplining it, keeping on top of it. And a part of your members is that tongue. So how do you discipline your tongue? All right, so whenever, situations are presented to you where you're emotional, or wherever positions are, presented to you where you feel like you need to say something, but you don't have to. All right, that's the time that you discipline your body. That's the time you discipline that tongue so that it says the right thing. All right, instead of just rambling about of whatever the fuck it wants to say. Okay, because that inward man is in control. All right, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua speaks through his men. Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua speaks through the men of the Lord. All right, offering your body as a living sacrifice to the Lord also means that, making sure that body is suitable for the Spirit to dwell in. All right, why would this, the Lord gonna send you the Spirit, and that Spirit gonna have to dwell in, a body that just totally loose on the tongue. That's why it's essential to try your earnest to perfect those imperfections by praying to the Lord, fasting, giving supplication to the Lord, and really trying your very hardest to knock off those old things that you did in the world. Because when that spirit's clinged onto you, now it's clinged onto this new person, this new creature. Okay? So those things that you did in the past have to fucking go, so that the spirit of Yahweh Shem Yahushua can dwell in you, and you can persevere. Okay? Lord willing, I was well said and edifying. It's like to the point where you just have to get rid of that old bullshit. All right? Because of fucking a tongue that staggers all over the place, and a tongue that just be saying whatever the fuck it wants to say, whenever it wants to say. It's some people in the world shit. All right? You come into this truth, there's an order about things. You can't just say whatever the fuck you want. Fuck freedom of speech. Fuck that. Okay? There's a balance to it all. You can't just say whatever the fuck you want to say. You can't speak whenever you want to speak. It has to be in order. It has to be in time. And in even, rehearsing those certain things around people at work, when you come to the sanctuary, when you come around brothers, especially for newer brothers that come into the faith, you come around brothers, now you trained up to do those things. Now around brothers, it's just natural for you to just hold your tongue, to not be, just overly speaking, because the more things that you say, the more you're going to be held accountable for it. That's the bottom line. It's the bottom line. Proverbs, the first chapter, Proverbs, I believe it's the 10th chapter, I think. I'm trying to think. So Proverbs, the 10th chapter, in the 19th verse, it says, "In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise." And reading that in the NLT before, it says, too much talk leads to sin, but sensible and keep your mouth shut. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. All right, so talking too much, man, you're going to be held accountable for the words that you say. The words of the godly are like sterling silver. The heart of a fool is worthless. So the words that come out of the men of the Lord are very, very pure. The thing about sterling silver is that's a top tier silver that you can get. That's real silver. They stamp sterling silver with these stamps so that people know that this is the real deal. The same thing between a moissanite diamond and a real diamond. The fool's gold and real gold. All right, the words of the godly are real. All right, because it comes from Yahweh Shem Yahushua. It's pure. All right, but at the end of the day, if you talk too much, eventually your flesh gonna try to creep into that speech. And it's going to put dross into that silver. It's going to fuck it up because your flesh is just that. Pride can kick in. Arrogancy. All these different elements of the flesh can kick into that speech and defile it. So it's essential to try your very earnest to keep that speech pure and simple. All right? We're not here to be super deep, philosophers. That's not what we're here. We're prophets, okay? We're not here to fucking, propose these crazy ideologies. We're not here to propose this super deep perspective. The apostles say, use that KISS, KISS acronym. Keep it simple, stupid. All right, but hey, I pray this lesson was edifying. I want to lastly give all honor, praises, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushua, Ba'Shem Kakodash, Shalom.